Thanks for joining me today as well. So, recently, I have been reading this book, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, and I kind of thought it would be a great to share this knowledge and some of the thought and feeling I had while going through the first part of the book. It is really powerful one, and this is also part of my speaking English practice. So, let's just talk through about that. In recently, I have read this book called Man's Search for Meaning. Uh, it is a kind of a different book than the books I used to read because I don't know, it is a kind of a non-fiction book, and I gave it a try because I have seen a lot of good reviews on that. So in this discussion, I think this discussion will be a series of discussion. I would like to talk about the book that I have read, Man's Search for Meaning, which is written by Viktor Frankl, and some of the chapters and the insight that I took from the book because it is a really valuable book that have been teaching us a lot of things about our life.
Here's the correct version. Recently, I read a book called Man's Search for Meaning. It's quite different from the books I usually read because it's nonfiction. I decided to give it a try after seeing many good reviews. In this discussion, I'd like to talk seriously about the book written by Viktor Frankl and share some of the chapters and insights I gained from it. It's a very valuable book that teaches us a lot about life. Your main issue was sentence flow. You repeated discussion twice, so I simplified that. Also, it is a kind of a nonfiction book, sounded awkward. I made it direct. Frankel's book is powerful because it doesn't just explain suffering, it shows how meaning gives people strength, even in terrible conditions. When you think about your own life, which part of the book spoke to you most strongly? The concentration camp experiences, or the section where he explains logotherapy?
That is something I want to get on. The book is actually called in initially The Introduction to Logotherapy. So at initial, before I read this book, I was kind of having this doubt about what is actually logotherapy. And I never heard about that as well.
Here's the correct version. Well, that's something I want to get into. The book was actually first called The Introduction to Logotherapy. Before I read it, I had some mixed doubts about what logotherapy really was. I figured get into, and at the initial, at first. Also, kind of having mixed doubt sounds clumsy, so I made it smoother. Logotherapy itself is interesting because Frankl describes it as the third school of Viennese psychotherapy, after Freud's psychoanalysis and Adler's individual psychology. Instead of focusing on pleasure or power, it's centered on finding meaning. Did you find his explanation of logotherapy clear once you got deeper into the book? Or did it still feel abstract?
Uh,
I'm having issues right now. Did not understand what you said.
yeah, the problem is I have read this book in my native language. So there are certain things that I didn't exactly understand because when it comes to the translation, the my native language version is quite different from how it explained in English. So that is something I really want to clarify with you because when we refer to the translation, there are some certain unconditioned things that not exactly meaning as in the English, right? So that is why I really expecting help from you understanding what he explains about this logotherapy on this book throughout this discussion.
Here's the correct version. Yeah, the problem is that I read this book in my native language. so there are certain things I didn't fully understand. The translation in my language is quite different from how it's explained in English. That's why I want to clarify some parts with you. In translation, some expressions don't carry the exact meaning they do in English, right? So I really expect to hear your explanation of what Frankel says about logotherapy throughout this discussion. Main changes. In my native language version is quite different. The translation in my language is quite different, and unconditional things didn't fit the meaning, so I shifted it to expressions don't carry the exact meaning. About your point, you're right. Translations often shift the meaning. Frankel's logotherapy is centered on the idea that the primary drive in life is not pleasure, Freud or power, Adler, but meaning. He explains that even in suffering, people can find purpose, and that purpose helps them survive mentally. When you read it in your language, which part of his idea about finding meaning did you feel was unclear or confusing? That way, I can explain it to you in simple terms.
So, in the first chapter, the moment that people actually enter and forced to go to this concentration campaign, he explained it's something like this. When they enter the concentration campaign, they lost their hope about their life. But when they get a chance to bath in the mere that situation, everybody start to laugh and be happy, and they were all naked in front of everyone, but they didn't care about it. The From the small moment they had, they experienced this water coming from this shower and how enjoy that mere moment, because they were really they were really didn't have any idea about whether they are going to this concentration camp or whether they are going to this the the gas room where they used to euthanize people.
Here's the correct version. In the first chapter, when people were forced into the concentration camp, Frankel explained it like this. When they entered, they lost hope about their lives. But then, when they got the chance to bathe in a near death situation, everyone suddenly started laughing and feeling happy. They were all naked in front of each other, but they didn't care. In that small moment, they simply experienced the water from the shower and enjoyed it. They had no idea whether they were being sent to the concentration camp or to the gas chamber where people were killed. Fixes? Concentration campaign, concentration camp. Bath in the near death situation, bathe in a near death situation. Also cleaned up the grammar and flow. What Frankel is showing here is how human beings can still find meaning or even joy in the smallest experiences, even when surrounded by horror. The prisoners had no control over life or death, but they could still appreciate something as simple as a shower, even in that terrifying uncertainty. When you read that part, did you feel surprised that people could laugh and feel joy even in such a place?
Yeah, because they actually have no idea about whether they are going to be killed or saved. So I think when people have this undoubt situation, they are kind of trying to be happy at least from the smallest thing that they have. So there was a part actually in the book that explained about that statement. It mentioned that as an animal, human can get used to anything. It is true. Human can get used to anything, but we don't know the psychological reason behind that. But people can get used to anything as an animal. So it might be different from exactly what it meant in English. I said it to you what exactly have written in the translation in my native language. So I think that is a part that exactly explain the human capability as a animal that we could adapt to any situation is something I feel like everything in our mind.
Here's the correct version. Yeah, because they had no idea whether they were going to be killed or saved. I think when people face such uncertain situations, they try to find happiness in the smallest things they have. There's a part in the book that explains this. It says that as animals, humans can get used to anything. It's true, humans can adapt to anything, but we don't always understand the psychological reason behind it. In the translation I read, it says something like, people can get used to anything as animals. I feel that what Frankel meant was about the human capability to adapt to any situation. It feels like everything depends on our mind. Fixes, undoubted situation, uncertain situations. I said it to you. In the translation I read, it said something like, plus cleaned up flow. What Frankel really meant is that humans are incredibly adaptable, both physically and psychologically. He even quotes Dostoevsky. Man is a being who can get used to anything, but he adds his own insight. It's not just about survival as an animal, it's about whether we find meaning in that survival. Animals adapt to survive, but humans can adapt and endure because they attach meaning to their suffering. Do you want me to explain more about how Frankel separates just adapting like an animal from finding meaning as a human?
Yeah, I think it is that what is actually Frankel tried to mention. So there is another statement on the book which mention about this adaptation. That is this the people who suffer, the people who near death, and people who already dead are the usual thing that we have seen in our concentration campaign. And after certain week of this concentration campaign life, these incidents are didn't make our heart suffering at all. We all get used to that.
Here's the correct version. I think that's what Frankel meant in a deeper sense. There's another statement in the book about adaptation. It says that seeing people suffer, seeing people near death, and even seeing people who had already died became normal inside the concentration camp. After a few weeks of camp life, these incidents no longer made their heart suffer. They had gotten used to it. Fixes, frankly quite dimensional, what Frankel meant in a deeper sense. Concentration campaign, concentration camp. Adjusted, these incidents didn't make our heart suffering at all. These incidents no longer made their heart suffer. This is one of Frankel's strongest observations. People can become numb to even the most horrific reality. At first, new prisoners were shocked by death and suffering, but after constant exposure, they became desensitized. This isn't because they lost their humanity, but because the mind protects itself. It has to adapt in order to keep functioning in such extreme conditions. Do you think this kind of numbness is more like a survival instinct, or do you feel it's something that slowly destroys part of a person's humanity?
Uh, I cannot give exactly an answer for that, but after I read the book, I feel like it was a survival mechanism of a human. Because if we panic and, I just don't know.
Here's the correct version. I can't give an exact answer to that, but after reading the book, I feel like it was a survival mechanism for humans. Small fixes, exactly an exact answer, and of a human for human. And yes, you're right. Frankel also viewed it as a survival mechanism. If prisoners had kept feeling the full weight of every death, every beating, every injustice, they would have collapsed mentally. So the mind numbed itself, not because they didn't care, but because caring too much would have destroyed them. When you read that part, did you feel more sadness about how people became numb or more admiration for their strength to survive?
I just don't know. I just have this mixed thought of kind of admire and as well as the very confusing feeling that people why acting in that way. So I think today we had been discussed about the initial part of the book, and I'm hoping to getting into a discussion where we discuss about the next part of this book as well. So I think that is a great thing that I have experienced, and thank you for your today's conversation help.
Here's the correct version. I don't really know. I just have mixed feelings, kind of admiration, but also confusion about why people respond that way. So I think today we've discussed the initial part of the book, and I'm hoping to continue with the next part in another discussion. This has been a great experience, and thank you for helping me with today's conversation. Fixes. I just don't know. I just have this mixed thought of, I don't really know. I just have mixed feelings. I'm hoping to getting into, I'm hoping to continue with. Your reflections are good. It's natural to feel both admiration and confusion at the same time. That's exactly what makes Frankel's writing powerful. It forces us to confront contradictions in human behavior.
So, yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to share for today. We look at the beginning of the Frankel's book, especially his experience in the concentration camp and how people adapt to the survival when they are facing death. And in the next time, I'll go deeper into the other part of the book and willing to have a discussion like this. So, thanks for spending this time with me, and I'll catch you in the next one.